Good evening. It's Friday, April 3rd, and this is Mrs. Bloom reading Artemis Fowl by Eoin Colfer. And I just found out that the movie Artemis Fowl, will be released directly to Disney Plus. It's not even going to make it to the movie theater due to recent events. So this is a very time-sensitive issue. So we will continue reading. We're going to continue reading with Chapter 6 called Siege. What we have read so far is Artemis has talked to Holly. She's being held captive. And he's not very happy now that he's actually met an elf. He's feeling bad about what he's done. So we'll see what happens. The LEP had established Surface Ops HQ at E1 Tara. Well, said Root, slapping a paramedic gremlin who was applying burn salve to his forehead. Leave it. The magic will sort me out soon enough. Well, what? Replied Foley. Don't give me any of your lip today, Foley, because today is not one of those. I'm oh so impressed with the pony's technology days. Tell me what you found on the human. Foley scowled, securing his foil hat between curled horns. He flipped the top on a wafer-thin laptop. I hacked into Interpol, not too difficult, I can tell you. They might as well put out a welcome mat. Root drummed his fingers on the conference table. Get on with it. Right. Fowl. 10-gigabyte file. In paper terms, that's half a library. The commander whistled. Whew, one busy human. Family, corrected Foley. The Fowls have been subverting justice for generations. Racketeering, smuggling, armed robbery, mostly corporate crime last century. So do we have a location? Well, that was the easy part. Fowl Manor, on a 200-acre estate on the outskirts of Dublin. Fowl Manor is only about 20 clicks from our current location. Root chewed his bottom lip. Only 20? That means we could make it before first light. Yep. Sort out this whole mess before it gets out of hand with the rays of the sun. The commander nodded. This was their first break. Fairies had not operated in natural light for centuries. Even when they'd lived above ground, they were essentially night creatures. The sun diluted their magic like bleaching a photograph. If they had to wait another day before sending in a strike force, who knows what damage Fowl could achieve. It was even possible that this whole affair was media-oriented, and by tomorrow morning, or evening, Captain Short's face would be on the cover of every publication on the planet. Root shuddered. That would spell the end of everything, unless the Mud People learned to coexist with their other species. And if history had taught any lessons, it was that humans couldn't get along with anyone, even themselves. Right. Everyone lock and load. V-flight patterns. Establish a perimeter inside manor grounds. The retrieval squad roared military-type affirmatives, coaxing as many metallic noises from their weapons as possible. Foley, round up the techies, follow us in the shuttle, and bring the big dishes. We'll shut down the entire estate, give ourselves a bit of breathing room. One thing, Commander, mused Foley. Yes, said Root impatiently. Why did this human tell us who he was? He must have known we could find him. Root shrugged. Maybe he's not as clever as he thinks he is. No, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it at all. I think he's been a step ahead of us the whole way, and this is no different. I don't have time for theorizing now, Foley. First light's approaching. One more thing, Commander. Is it important? Yes, I think it is. Well? Foley tapped a key on his laptop, scrolling through Artemis' vital statistics. This criminal mastermind, the one behind this elaborate scheme? Yeah, what about him? Foley looked up, almost admiring in his golden eyes. Well, he's only 12 years old, and that's young, even for humans. Root snorted, jacking a new battery into his tri-barreled blaster. Too much damn TV. Thinks he's Sherlock Holmes. That's Professor Moriarty, corrected Foley. Holmes, Moriarty, they both look the same with the flesh scrolled off their skulls. With that elegant parting response, Root followed his squad into the night air. The retrieval squad adopted the V-Goose formation with Root on point. They flew southwest following the video feed emailed to their helmets. Foley had even marked Fowl Manor with a red dot. Idiot-proof, he muttered into his mouthpiece, just loud enough for the commander to hear him. The centerpiece of the Fowl estate was a renovated late medieval early modern castle built by Lord Hugh Fowl in the 15th century. The Fowls held on to Fowl Manor over the years, surviving war, civil unrest, and several tax audits. Artemis did not intend to be the one who lost it. The estate was ringed by a 10-foot crenellated stone wall, complete with the original guard towers and walkways. The retrieval squad put down just inside the boundary and began an immediate scan for possible hostiles. 50 feet apart, instructed Root. Sweep the area. Check in every 60 seconds. Clear? Retrieval nodded. Of course it was clear. They were professionals. Lieutenant Cudgeon, retrieval squad's leader, climbed a guard tower. You know what I think we should do, Julius? He and Root had been in the academy together, brought up in the same tunnel. Cudgeon was one of the 5 fairies who could call Root by his first name. I know what you think we should do. We should blast the whole place. What a surprise. Cleanest way. 1 blue rinse, and our losses are minimum. Blue rinse was the slang term for the devastating biological bomb used on rare occasions by the Force. The clever thing about a biobomb was that it destroyed only living tissue. The landscape was unchanged. That minimum loss you're talking about happens to be one of my officers. Oh, yes, tutted Cudgeon. Female recon officer. Test case. Well, I don't think you'll have any problem justifying a tactical solution. Root's face took on that familiar purple hue. The best thing you can do right now is stay out of my way, or else I might be forced to ram that blue rinse straight in that morass you call a brain. Cudgeon was unperturbed. Insulting me doesn't change the facts, Julius. You know what the book says. We cannot under any circumstance allow the lower elements to be compromised. 1 time stop is all you get. After that... The lieutenant didn't finish the statement. He didn't have to. I know what the book says, snapped Root. I just wish you weren't so gung-ho about it. If I didn't know you better, I'd say there was some human blood in you. There's no call for that, pouted Cudgeon. I'm only doing my job. Point taken, conceded the commander. I'm sorry. You don't often hear Root apologizing, but then it had been a deeply offensive insult. Butler was on the monitors. Anything? asked Artemis. Butler started. He hadn't heard the young master come in. No, nothing. Once or twice I thought I saw a flicker, but it turned out to be nothing. Nothing is nothing, commented Artemis cryptically. Use the new camera. Butler nodded. Only last month, Master Fowl had purchased a cinecamera over the internet, 2,000 frames a second, recently developed by Industrial Light and Magic for specialized nature shoots, hummingbird wings and such. It's processed images faster than the human eye could. Artemis had had it installed behind a cherub over the main entrance. Butler activated the joypad. Where? Try the avenue. I have a feeling visitors are on the way. The manservant manipulated the toothpick-sized stick with his massive fingers. A live image sprang into life on the digital monitor. Nothing, muttered Butler. Quiet as a grave. Artemis pointed to the control desk. Freeze it. Butler nearly questioned the order. Nearly. Instead, he held his tongue and pressed the pad. On screen, the cherry trees froze, blossoms trapped in midair. More important, a dozen or so black-clad figures suddenly appeared on the avenue. What? Exclaimed Butler. Where did they spring from? They're shielded, explained Artemis, vibrating at a high speed, too fast for the human camera to follow. Or human eye, but not for the camera, nodded Butler. Master Artemis, always 2 steps ahead. If only I could carry it around with me. If only, but we do have the next best thing. Artemis lifted a headset gingerly from the workbench. It was the remains of Holly's helmet. Obviously, trying to cram Butler's head into the original helmet would be like trying to fit a potato into a thimble. Only the visor and control buttons were intact. Straps from a hard hat had been rigged to fit the manservant's cranium. This thing is equipped with several filters. It stands to reason that one of them is anti-shield. Let's try it out, shall we? Artemis placed the set over Butler's ears. Obviously, with your eye span, there are going to be blind spots, but it shouldn't hamper you unduly. Now, run the camera. Butler set the camera rolling again while Artemis slotted down one filter after another. Now? No. Now? Everything's gone red. Ultraviolet. No fairies. Now? No, Polaroid, I think. Last one. Butler smiled. A shark that spotted a bear behind. Got him. Butler was seeing the world as it was, complete with leopard retrieval teams sweeping the avenue. Said Artemis. Strobe variation, I would guess, using very high frequency. I see, fibbed Butler. Metaphorically or literally? His employer smiled. Exactly. Artemis shook himself. More jokes. The next thing, he'd be wearing clown shoes and turning cartwheels in the main hall. Very well, Butler. Time for you to do what you do best. We appear to have intruders in the grounds. Butler stood. No further instructions were necessary. He tightened the hard hat straps, striding brusquely to the door. Oh, and Butler? Yes, Artemis. I prefer scared to dead, if possible. Butler nodded. If possible. Lep Retrieval 1 were the best and the brightest. It was every little fairy's dream that one day he would grow up to don the black stealth jumpsuit of the Retrieval Commandos. These were the elite. Trouble was their middle name. In the case of Captain Kelp, Trouble was actually his first name. He'd insisted on it in his manhood ceremony, just having been accepted into the academy. Trouble led his team down the sweeping avenue. As usual, he took the point position himself, determined to be the first into the fray, as he fervently hoped a fray developed. "Check in," he whispered into the mic that wound snake-like from his helmet. "Negative on 1. "Nothing, Captain. A big negatory, Trouble." Captain Kelp winced. "We're in the field, Corporal. Follow procedure." "But Mommy said—" "I don't care what Mommy said, Corporal. Rank is rank. You will refer to me as Captain Kelp." "Yes, Captain," sulked the corporal, "but don't ask me to iron your tunic any more." Trouble zeroed in on his brother's channel, shutting out the rest of the squad. "Shut up about Mommy, will you? And the ironing? You're only on this mission because I requested you. Now start acting like a professional, or get back to the perimeter." "Okay, Trubs." "Trouble!" shouted Captain Kelp. "It's trouble. Not Trubs, not Trub. Trouble, okay?" "Okay, trouble. Mommy's right. You're only a baby." Swearing very unprofessionally, Captain Kelp switched his headset back to the open channel. He was just in time to hear an unusual sound. "What was that?" "What?" "Dunno." "Nothing, Captain." But Trouble had done sound recognition in service for his captain's exam, and he was pretty sure the had been caused by someone getting a chop across the windpipe. More than likely his brother had walked into a shrub. "Grub, are you all right?" "That's Corporal Grub to you." Kelp viciously kicked a daisy. "Check in. Sound off in sequence. 1, okay. 2, fine. 3, bored but alive. 5, approaching west wing." Kelp froze. "Wait. 4, you there? 4, what's your situation?" "Nothing but static." "Right, 4 is down. Possibly in an equipment malfunction. Still, we can't afford to take any chances. Regroup by the main door." Retrieval 1 crept together, making slightly less noise than a silk spider. Kelp did a quick head count. 11. 1 short of a full complement. 4 was probably wandering around in the rose bushes, wondering why nobody was talking to him. Then Trouble noticed 2 things. 1. A pair of black boots was sticking out of a shrub beside the door, and 2. There was a massive human standing in the doorway. The figure was cradling a very nasty-looking gun in the crook of his arm. "Go silent," whispered Kelp, and immediately 11 full-face visors slid down to seal in the sounds of his squad's breathing and communication. "Now, nobody panic. I think I can trace the sequence of events from here. 4 is skulking around outside the door. The mudman opens it. 4 gets a whack on the noggin and lands in the bushes. No problem. Cover intact. Repeat, intact, so no itchy figures. Please, Corporal Kelp. Check 4's vitals. The rest of you, make a hole. Keep it quiet." The squad stepped back carefully until they were standing on the manicured, grassy verge. The figure before them was indeed impressive, without doubt the biggest human any of them had ever seen. "Target," breathed 2. "Maintain radio silence, except in emergencies," ordered Kelp. "Swearing is hardly an emergency." Secretly, however, he concurred with the sentiment. This was one time he was glad to be shielded. That man looked as if he could squash half a dozen fairies in one massive fist. Grub returned to his slot. 4 is stable, concussed, I guess, but otherwise okay. His shield's off, though, so I stuffed him in the bushes." "Well done, Corporal. Good thinking." The last thing they needed was for 4's boots to be spotted. The man moved, lumbering casually along the path. He may have glanced left or right. It was difficult to tell beneath the hood pulled over his eyes. Odd for a human to wear a hood on such a fine night. "Safety catches off," ordered Trouble. He imagined his men rolling their eyes, like they hadn't had their safeties off for the last half hour. Still, he had to go by the book in case of a tribunal later on. There was a time when Retrieval blasted first and answered questions never. But not anymore. Now there were always some do-gooder civilian banging on about civil rights, even for humans, if you can believe it. The man-mountain stepped right in the middle of the squad. If he'd been able to see them, it would have been a perfect tactical position. Their own firearms were virtually useless, as they would probably do more damage to each other than the human. Fortunately, the entire squad was invisible, with the exception of 4, who was safely hidden in what appeared to be a rhododendron. "Buzz batons up! Fire 'em up!" Just in case, no harm being cautious. And when the LEP officers were switching their weapons, right at that moment, when their hands were fumbling with holsters, that's when the mudman spoke. "Evening, gentlemen," he said, sweeping back his hood. Funny, thought Trouble. It was almost as if... Then he saw the makeshift goggles. "Cover!" he screamed. "Cover!" But it was too late, but to stand and fight. And that was no option at all. And this is as far as we're going to read tonight, because Chapter 6 is rather massive. So I hope you all have a good evening, and I'll check in again tomorrow.